What do we have that's news?
Well, let's start with Letters from Iwo Jima, which we won't have a clip of because it's in Japanese. An interesting thing here, it's a contender for Best Film on Sunday night. We should say, incidentally, that on Monday morning, to catch up with all your Oscars stuff, you and I are going to be...
I think we're on the telly at 9:30, but we'll probably do it for the radio audience as
Exactly,
well.
in the afternoon.
At 1 o'clock.
And I'm doing my alternative Oscars on the Culture Show on Saturday night, which are the correct ones, obviously. It's how they should go, but they won't go, blah, blah, blah. But Letters from Iwo Jima up for...
Enough gratuitous self-promotion.
When has that ever been enough for me? Letters from Iwo Jima is up for Best Film.
Not Best Foreign Language Film?
No, it's not. It's up for Best Film.
So in a foreign language?
It is in a foreign language, but it's directed by Clint Eastwood, so they kind of make a...
What difference does that make?
Well, it's, for example, it's like Il Postino, which was up for Best Film. Now, at the time of Il Postino, the reason for that was that in order for a film to be eligible for Best Foreign Language, it had to be submitted by the country in whose language it was. And the Italians didn't want to submit Il Postino because it was directed by Michael Radford, who, of course, is English. So that may be the case, but it may also be just like, hey, we don't want you to be foreign in the Best Film, but if you're Clint Eastwood, we'll forgive you for it, okay? So Japanese language is the other side of Flags of Our Fathers. Flags of Our Fathers was the American version of the Battle of Iwo Jima. This is seen from the Japanese side. I have to say, I didn't like Flags of Our Fathers very much. Flags of Our Fathers was a very long argument about how, in wartime, an image can be constructed to mean a whole bunch of things. It's the very famous image of the American soldiers holding the flag, you know, the victorious flag, which is then a famous statue. And then the movie, at great length, goes over and over and over the way in which the image is constructed, the way in which it isn't actually those guys, the way in which it's not what it seems, and it becomes a real diatribe about, you know, propaganda, which is fine. It's just the point was made pretty quickly. In the case of Letters from Iwo Jima, seeing it from the Japanese side, obviously, you know, from the very beginning, they're not going to win, okay? So what you're looking at is an impending tragedy. And what happens is that you meet the characters who are, at least, you know, in general, going to face the death or glory thing, because of course one of the themes of the film is it's about that moral imperative, which is that you must win or die trying, even when the battle is clearly hopeless, even when there is no chance of you winning. And so what happens over the course of its 2 hours and 20 minutes, so it is pretty long, and it takes its time. It knows that it's, you know, it's a serious story, therefore it's going to unfold very slowly. We see the characters all coming to face what looks like absolute doom and tragedy and disaster. There are some familiar faces. Ken Watanabe, of course, who's a very, very famous actor on an international scale, who I think most people will recognise, is kind of the lead character. But there's also a role by a guy called Katsunaru Ninomiya, who apparently is an incredibly famous pop star. He's one part of a group called Arashi. Do you know them? No. Bigger than Bananarama, if such a thing could be true.
Heavens.
And he plays the young guy through whose eyes we kind of also see the story mediated. Now, on the positive side, it does have a genuine emotional core. It is very moving. The battle scenes are horrific, but for most of it, it's a kind of elegiac story about people facing catastrophe, people facing doom, and it's very, very kind of pro its characters in the doomed heroism that they display in the face of this. And when you compare it, for example, to something like Sands of Iwo Jima, the John Wayne film, which is sort of how the story's always been portrayed in the past, that they're all just faceless enemy, there is something politically interesting in doing this. It's a much better film than Flags of Our Fathers because you actually get to care about the characters. In Flags of Our Fathers, I just felt like it was argumentative. Not that that's a bad thing, but it wasn't particularly engaging. And not only is it a better film, it actually makes Flags of Our Fathers look like a better film, because there's one moment in which the raising of the flag happens, but it's way off in the background and it's hardly dwelt upon, and you probably wouldn't even notice it. So it's giving you that sense that you are seeing the other side of that story. And that in itself is a useful thing. The visuals are very, very washed out, although they feel slightly less sub-Private Ryan than they did in Flags of Our Fathers. So what you have is a movie which has great honourable intent, a good performance, I think, by Ken Watanabe, directed with dignity, restraint and purpose. However, is it a masterpiece? Is it really a contender for Best Film? Honestly, I don't think...
Well, it is, isn't it?
No, it is, you know, in the way that Driving Miss Daisy was a Best Film winner, but it doesn't mean it is a Best Film.
Cracker.
Pardon?
Great film.
Cracker?
Get on with it.
Not Cracker with Robbie Coltrane?
No.
That was never a contender for Best Film.
I enjoyed Driving Miss Daisy, that's all.
Yeah, so if I can just get to the punchline of that thing, it is honourable, and admirable, but whether or not it's actually a great film, I think the jury is out. I think it is a much better film than Flags of Our Fathers. I think at 2 hours and 20 minutes, it pretty much does everything and then some other stuff. I could have lived without the flashbacks, particularly the flashback about the guy ending up on Iwo Jima because he refused to shoot a dog, which smacked to me of, melodramatic sentimentality. But for the most part, it is restrained. And as I said, better than Flags of Our Fathers by quite some distance.
If I haven't seen Flags of My Fathers, am I missing out on anything?
Well, no, because you kind of know the story anyway, which is, it's the Battle of Iwo Jima. But, on the other hand, I mean, if you haven't seen Flags of Our Fathers, you don't need to. But if you have seen Flags of Our Fathers and were disappointed, don't let that put you off Letters from Iwo Jima, which is a far better film. And actually, I think that you will feel better about Flags of Our Fathers otherwise.
We were asking for...
Afterwards, not otherwise. That's what I meant.
Right.
I meant afterwards, not otherwise.
OK, we'll just edit that bit in.
OK, fine.